The UNSS Vanguard drifted in the vast, silent expanse of space, its sleek hull reflecting the cold light of distant stars. This was no ordinary vessel, it was humanity's finest warship, a masterpiece of engineering built to protect the fragile line between survival and extinction. The ship's reinforced frame held an arsenal of cutting-edge weaponry railguns capable of tearing through solid asteroids, torpedoes armed with explosive cores powerful enough to vaporize enemy vessels, and energy shields designed to withstand relentless bombardments. Yet, even with all its technological prowess, the Vanguard felt hauntingly small against the dark void where the Zorak Armada lurked, a force so massive that its shadow threatened to engulf entire worlds. Inside the Vanguard, the hum of machinery was a constant backdrop to the murmurs of the crew. They were a diverse group, each chosen not just for their expertise but for their resilience under pressure. Lieutenant Ramirez, the weapons officer, stood at her console with the precision of a surgeon, her fingers flying over the controls as she double-checked the targeting systems. Ensign Blake, a young engineer with an uncanny knack for problem-solving, moved between stations, ensuring every subsystem operated flawlessly. The atmosphere on the bridge was tense but focused. They all knew what was at stake. Captain Marcus Hale stood at the center of it all, a commanding figure with sharp eyes that seemed to pierce through any facade of confidence or fear. His presence was both reassuring and intimidating, a reminder that while they were up against impossible odds, their leader would not falter. Hale's reputation was legendary. He was a tactician who thrived under pressure, a man who inspired unwavering loyalty. Yet beneath the steel of his demeanor lay a deep connection to his crew. He knew their names, their strengths, their fears. They were more than soldiers to him, they were the beating heart of the Vanguard, and he would protect them with every ounce of his being. As Hale scanned the bridge, a soft chime alerted the crew to an incoming transmission. The tactical officer turned to him, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. "Captain, long-range sensors have detected the Zorak fleet. They'll be within engagement range in less than an hour." The room fell silent, the gravity of the moment settling over them like a heavy shroud. Hale nodded, his expression unreadable. "Bring it up on the main screen." A holographic display flickered to life, revealing the Zorak Armada in chilling detail. Ships upon ships stretched across the void, their dark, organic forms bristling with weapons. The Vanguard sensors estimated their numbers in the hundreds, a force designed not just to conquer but to annihilate. Against them stood one lone ship, its crew of a few hundred souls pitted against an army. The silence on the bridge was broken by the voice of Argus, the ship's AI. Probability of success in direct engagement 2.7%. Recommendation: surrender or retreat. Hale's jaw tightened, but his voice was calm. "Thank you, Argus. I'll take that under advisement." Turning to face his crew, he straightened his posture, his voice carrying the authority of a man who had faced countless battles. "Listen up. We all knew this day might come. The Zorak think they can crush us because of their numbers. They think they can intimidate us into surrendering without a fight. But what they don't understand is that humanity doesn't back down. We faced extinction before, and we've survived. Not because we were stronger, not because we were faster, but because we refused to give up." He paused, letting his words sink in, his eyes meeting each crew member's gaze. "Today we are the line between them and Earth. Between them and our families, our homes, everything we hold dear. They don't expect us to win, and maybe they're right. But if this is where humanity makes it stand, then so be it. We'll show them what one ship, one crew, and one unyielding spirit can do." The bridge erupted in a chorus of affirmations, the crew's resolve solidifying under Hale's leadership. They turned back to their stations, their movements precise and purposeful. There was no room for hesitation now. Moments later, another chime signaled an incoming communication. The holographic display shifted, revealing the imposing figure of Admiral Krath, the Zorak fleet's commander. His reptilian features twisted into a sneer, his golden eyes glinting with malice. "Humans," he drawled, his voice dripping with disdain. "You have one chance to save yourselves. Surrender your vessel and pledge your allegiance to the Zorak Dominion, and we may spare your pathetic world." Hale stepped forward, his expression cold and unyielding. "Admiral Krath, your offer is generous," he said, his tone laced with sarcasm. "But humanity doesn't bow to tyrants. If you want Earth, you'll have to get through us first." Krath's sneer deepened, his tone mocking. "Brave words for a doomed species. Very well, Captain. I'll make sure your people remember your defiance as the reason for their annihilation." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Hale turned to his crew, his voice steady. "You heard the man. Battle stations. Let's show them what we're made of." The crew sprang into action, the calm precision of their movements betraying none of the fear that gripped their hearts. The Vanguard systems came alive, weapons charging and shields powering up as they prepared for the onslaught. On the main screen, the Zorak fleet loomed closer, a storm on the horizon ready to break. Hale took his seat at the command console, his gaze fixed on the approaching armada. The odds were against them, the stakes higher than ever, but he felt no hesitation. Humanity had faced impossible odds before, and they would face them again. As the first Zorak ships moved into range, he gave the order. "Open fire." The battle for survival had begun. The silence of anticipation was shattered by the shrill alarms of the Vanguard systems. On the tactical screen, the Zorak ships surged forward like a dark tide, their formation tight and purposeful. The first wave of their assault force closed in, hundreds of ships bristling with weapons aimed squarely at humanity's last hope. The bridge buzzed with activity as crew members scrambled to their positions, their movements precise, their focus razor-sharp. Captain Marcus Hale's voice rang out above the din, steady and unwavering. "Hold the line. Weapons free on my mark. Let's show them what precision looks like." The first barrage hit before his command, an unrelenting storm of plasma blasts streaking through the void. The Vanguard's energy shields flared to life, absorbing the brunt of the onslaught. On the screens, a cascade of colors danced as the shields rippled and shimmered, holding firm against the furious attack. Lieutenant Ramirez barked orders from the weapons console, her hands a blur over the controls. Rail guns ready. Torpedoes locked on the lead frigates. Hale's hand hovered over his console. Fire. The Vanguard's retaliation was as calculated as it was devastating. Railguns discharged with a thunderous roar, their electromagnetic slugs slicing through space at unimaginable speeds. Each impact against the Zorak frigates sent debris spiraling into the void. Torpedoes streaked across the battlefield, their fiery trails like vengeful comets homing in on targets. When they struck, the explosions lit up the darkness, briefly casting the bridge in an orange glow. The Zorak ships pressed forward, undeterred by their losses. They swarmed like predators circling prey, their weapons firing relentlessly. The Vanguard's shields flickered but held strong, the ship's systems expertly tuned to handle the assault. Ensign Blake's voice cracked through the comms, laced with urgency. "Portside power relays are straining, rerouting auxiliary systems to stabilize the grid." Ramirez gritted her teeth, eyes locked on the tactical screen. "We can't keep this pace forever, Captain. Shields are holding, but the moment they buckle, we're exposed." Hale nodded, his mind already racing through possibilities. "We don't need forever. Focus fire on their command frigates. Break their coordination." The Vanguard's strategy became clear as its weapons shifted targets. Instead of spreading fire across the swarm, they honed in on key vessels at the center of the Zorak formation. Each calculated strike sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. The Zorak frigates began to falter, their movements less precise, their formation breaking apart under the relentless assault. A direct hit on their lead ship, Ramirez called out, her voice triumphant. On the main screen, a massive Zorak frigate erupted in flames, its hull splitting apart before disintegrating entirely. The explosion sent smaller ships scrambling, disrupting their advance. The Vanguard capitalized on the chaos, picking off isolated targets with surgical precision. In the engine room, Blake worked frantically, sweat dripping down his face as he patched a failing conduit. Sparks flew around him, the hum of the ship's systems a constant reminder of the battle raging above. Main reactors stabilized, he reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. We've got full power to the shields again. The crew's efficiency under pressure was a testament to their training and resolve. Each member played their part with unwavering focus, their actions synchronized like the gears of a finely tuned machine. Argus, the ship's AI, provided constant updates, its monotone voice cutting through the tension. Enemy fleet strength reduced by 23%. Probability of victory increasing. The Zorak, however, were far from defeated. A second wave of frigates surged forward, their weapons systems glowing ominously as they charged for a concentrated attack. The bridge trembled as another barrage struck the Vanguard, the shields rippling violently. A low groan echoed through the ship, a stark reminder of their vulnerability. Hale's gaze didn't waver. Ramirez, target their flagship. We need to send a message. The Zorak flagship loomed on the tactical display, a hulking behemoth bristling with firepower. Its dark, organic design seemed to pulse with life, a stark contrast to the Vanguard's sleek and metallic form. Ramirez's fingers flew across her console, locking in the targeting coordinates. Rail guns charged. Torpedoes ready. Hale's voice cut through the tension like a blade. Fire everything we've got. The Vanguard's weapons unleashed a devastating salvo, rail guns punching through the flagship's outer hull while torpedoes tore into its core. The resulting explosion was catastrophic, a blinding burst of light that illuminated the battlefield. The shock wave rippled through the enemy fleet, sending smaller ships spiraling out of control. For a moment, silence fell over the bridge as the crew watched the destruction unfold. The Zorak fleet began to retreat, their disarray palpable. What had started as a relentless assault had turned into a chaotic scramble for survival. The Vanguard, battered but unyielding, stood victorious. The crew erupted into cheers, their relief and pride filling the air. Ramirez leaned back in her chair, a rare smile breaking across her face. That's what they get for underestimating us. Blake's voice crackled over the comms, tinged with exhaustion but triumphant. System stable. No critical damage. We're still in this fight. Hale, however, remained stoic. His gaze lingered on the tactical screen, where the remnants of the Zorak fleet faded into the distance. He knew this was only the beginning. The Zorak were not a species to accept defeat lightly, and their retreat likely signaled something far more dangerous on the horizon. Good work, everyone, Hale said, his voice cutting through the celebratory murmurs. But don't get comfortable. This was the first wave. The next one will be worse. The bridge fell quiet as the weight of his words sank in. The crew exchanged glances, their joy tempered by the realization of the battles yet to come. Still, their resolve didn't waver. They had proven that humanity could stand against the might of the Zorak, and they would do it again. Hale turned back to the main display, his expression hardening. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast and unforgiving battlefield. Somewhere out there, the Zorak were regrouping, their sights still set on Earth. The Vanguard had bought humanity time, but the war was far from over. As the ship's systems hummed back to life, preparing for the next encounter, Hale took a deep breath. The fight wasn't over, but for now they had won. And that was enough. The calm after the first battle was short-lived. The crew of the Vanguard barely had time to catch their breath before the alarms blared once again. This time, the tactical display painted a far more daunting picture. A second Zorak fleet had emerged from the shadow of a nearby nebula, its numbers dwarfing the first wave. At the heart of this armada loomed dreadnoughts, massive, heavily armored vessels bristling with weapons and designed for pure annihilation. These were not just ships of war, they were symbols of dominance. At their forefront was a flagship even larger and more menacing than the rest. From the command deck, the crew stared in uneasy silence as the holographic display filled with the overwhelming presence of the Zorak reinforcements. The voice of Argus broke the silence, cold and detached. Enemy fleet strength exceeds 300% of prior wave. Zorak dreadnoughts detected. Probability of Vanguard survival 0.8%. Captain Hale straightened in his chair, his expression unreadable as the grim data scrolled across his console. The odds had always been against them, but this felt different. This felt insurmountable. And yet, he refused to show hesitation. He rose from his seat, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The Zorak think they've already won. Let's prove them wrong. We're not here to play by their rules. We adapt. We survive. Argus, calculate optimal firing solutions and evasive maneuvers. Ramirez, ready all weapons. Blake, I want shield efficiency pushed to its limits. Let's make every shot count. The bridge buzzed with activity as the crew sprang into action, their initial fear giving way to determination. Hale's confidence was infectious, a steady anchor in the chaos. The first communication from the Zorak fleet arrived shortly after. High Commander Vac appeared on the display, his towering frame and cold, reptilian gaze filling the screen. Unlike Admiral Krath, Vac exuded no arrogance, only calculated disdain. His voice was a low growl, each word deliberate. Humanity's defiance is as short-lived as it is foolish. Your first victory was an anomaly, a flicker before the flame is snuffed out. Prepare for your annihilation. Hale met Vac's gaze without flinching. We've already prepared, Commander. The only question is whether you're ready to face the consequences of underestimating us. Vac's expression didn't change, but the communication ended abruptly, a clear indication of his intent to let his actions speak. The Zorak fleet surged forward, dreadnoughts leading the charge, their weapons charging with ominous light. The vanguard braced for impact. The first salvo struck with terrifying force. The vanguard's shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the initial assault, but the sheer intensity of the barrage caused the ship to shudder violently. Consoles flickered, and the sound of straining metal reverberated through the halls. Ramirez fired back with precision, directing railgun fire and torpedoes at the smaller ships flanking the dreadnoughts. The vanguard's weapons found their marks, turning several enemy vessels into clouds of debris. But the dreadnoughts pressed on, their thick armor shrugging off the vanguard's counterattacks. Shields at 72%, Argus reported, its monotone voice betraying no urgency. Recommend immediate repositioning to avoid concentrated fire. Hale nodded. Blake, reroute auxiliary power to the starboard shields. Ramirez, shift our focus to their flanking ships. We need to disrupt their formation. The crew moved with practiced precision, each order carried out with the speed and efficiency born of necessity. The vanguard twisted and turned, its sleek frame darting through the chaos of battle. Enemy ships swarmed like predators, but the vanguard's agility kept them at bay. Ramirez coordinated a relentless barrage, targeting weak points in the Zorak formation. Blake worked tirelessly to keep the shield stable, sweat dripping down his face as he bypassed failing circuits and rerouted power to critical systems. Despite their efforts, the overwhelming firepower of the Zorak fleet began to take its toll. The vanguard's shields flickered under the sustained assault, and a series of explosions rocked the ship as a plasma barrage breached the outer hull. Sparks flew, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the bridge. Crew members stumbled but quickly regained their footing, their resolve unbroken. Damage to port side engines, Blake reported, his voice steady despite the chaos. We've lost some maneuverability, but we're still operational. Hale's mind raced. The Zorak were adapting, their tactics shifting to exploit the vanguard's vulnerabilities. He needed a new plan, and fast. His gaze fell on the tactical display, where the Zorak command ship loomed like a dark star at the center of the fleet. An idea began to form, risky but with the potential to turn the tide. He turned to Argus. What's the probability of success if we target their command ship directly? Argus processed for a moment before responding. Probability of success is indeterminate. Approach will require evasion of multiple dreadnoughts and precision targeting of critical systems. Significant risk to ship and crew. Hale clenched his jaw. There was no other choice. Ramirez, prepare all remaining torpedoes for a concentrated strike on their command ship. Blake, I need every ounce of power diverted to propulsion and shields. Argus, plot us a course straight through their formation. We're going right at them. The crew exchanged glances but quickly moved to execute the plan. They trusted Hale, even when the odds seemed impossible. The Vanguard accelerated, its engines roaring as it plunged into the heart of the Zorak fleet. Dreadnoughts turned to intercept, their weapons firing in unison. The shields screamed under the strain, but the Vanguard pressed on, weaving through the storm of plasma and rail fire with calculated precision. As the command ship came into range, Ramirez locked onto its vulnerable points. Target acquired. Torpedoes ready. Hale's voice was steady. Fire. The Vanguard unleashed its full arsenal, torpedoes streaking toward the command ship like fiery comets. The explosions that followed were deafening, ripping through the Zorak flagship's hull with catastrophic force. The ship shuddered, its once imposing frame collapsing in on itself as secondary explosions erupted from within. The shockwave sent nearby enemy vessels spiraling out of control, their formation collapsing in the chaos. The remaining Zorak ships hesitated, their coordination shattered without their leader. The Vanguard seized the moment, delivering punishing blows to the disoriented fleet. One by one, the enemy vessels either retreated or were destroyed. The battlefield fell silent, the once overwhelming armada reduced to scattered wreckage. On the bridge, the crew erupted into cheers, their exhaustion momentarily forgotten in the euphoria of victory. Hale allowed himself a small smile but quickly refocused. The Vanguard was battered, its system strained to the limit, and casualties weighed heavy on his mind. Yet they had survived, against all odds. He turned to Ramirez and Blake, his voice calm but resolute. This isn't over. Let's regroup and prepare for what's next. They'll be back, and so will we. The remnants of the Zorak fleet scattered like leaves caught in a violent storm. Ships that had once surged forward with ruthless purpose now veered off course, their formations broken and their weapons silenced. The destruction of their command ship had dealt a devastating blow, not just to their strategy but to their morale. One by one, the remaining Zorak vessels powered down their weapons, signaling surrender. Others fled into the void, their engines burning brightly as they disappeared into the expanse of space. For the first time since the battle began, silence returned to the bridge of the Vanguard. The crew, weary but triumphant, worked to secure the battlefield. Ramirez coordinated the targeting systems to disable fleeing ships, ensuring they would not regroup for another assault. Teams were dispatched to board the surrendered vessels, their objective clear: capture high-ranking officers and recover any intelligence that could provide insight into the Zorak's plans. On one of the enemy ships, Lieutenant Ramirez herself led a boarding party. Her voice crackled over the comms as she reported back to Hale. We've secured the bridge, Captain. There's resistance, but we're holding. Looks like we've got their tactical officer. He's not cooperating yet, but I think he will. Hale acknowledged her report with a curt nod, his attention split between the tactical display and the damage reports scrolling across his console. The Vanguard had taken a beating. Hull breaches in multiple sections, 2 railgun arrays offline, and shield generators operating at reduced capacity. Yet despite the damage, the ship was still intact, a testament to both its design and the determination of its crew. Casualty reports came in next, each name a heavy weight on Hale's shoulders. He knew every one of them, not just as soldiers but as people. Each loss was a reminder of the price they had paid for this victory. As the crew worked tirelessly to stabilize the ship and secure the battlefield, a priority transmission came through from Earth. The holographic display flickered to life, revealing the grim visage of Admiral Keene. The lines on his face seemed deeper than usual, his expression shadowed by the weight of the message he carried. Captain Hale, congratulations on your victory. The Vanguard has done what no other ship could. But I'm afraid your work is far from over. Hale's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. What's the situation, Admiral? Keen's voice was heavy. Intelligence from captured Zorak officers and intercepted transmissions confirms what we feared. This fleet was only a vanguard. Their main invasion force is mobilizing as we speak. It's 10 times the size of what you just faced. They'll reach Earth in less than 2 weeks. The weight of Keen's words settled over the bridge like a storm cloud. The crew exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier relief replaced by a renewed sense of urgency. Hale straightened, his jaw tightening. Understood, Admiral. What are our orders? You're to hold the line, Keen said, his voice firm. Reinforcements are on their way, but they won't arrive in time to intercept the main fleet. The Vanguard is Earth's first and only line of defense until they get there. Do whatever it takes to buy us time. Hale nodded, his resolve unshaken. We'll be ready. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in silence once more. Hale turned to face his crew, their eyes fixed on him, waiting for guidance. He could see the exhaustion in their faces, the weight of the battle they had just endured. And yet he also saw something else: determination, a spark of defiance that refused to be extinguished. He stepped forward, his voice steady and clear. You've all heard the news. What we've just faced was only the beginning. The Zorak are coming and they're bringing everything they've got. But so are we. Earth is counting on us, and I know we won't let them down. He paused, letting his words sink in before continuing. They'll come at us with numbers, with firepower, with everything they think will break us. But we've proven today that we're not so easily broken. We're not just fighting for survival. We're fighting for our families, our homes, everything we hold dear. And as long as we stand, as long as the Vanguard stands, humanity stands. The bridge erupted in a chorus of affirmations, the crew's spirits lifted by Hale's words. They returned to their stations with renewed purpose, preparing the ship for the battles yet to come. Engineers worked tirelessly to repair the damage, patching hull breaches and rerouting power to critical systems. Weapons were reloaded, and shield generators were recalibrated. The Vanguard may have been battered, but it was far from defeated. As the crew worked, Hale retreated to his quarters for a brief moment of solitude. He gazed out of the viewport at the wreckage of the battle, the stars beyond shining cold and distant. The weight of command pressed heavily on him, but he refused to let it break him. This was his duty, his responsibility. He had chosen this path, and he would see it through, no matter the cost. The final preparations were completed hours later. The Vanguard, though scarred from the battle, stood ready for the next challenge. Its weapons were primed, its shields restored to full capacity, and its crew more determined than ever. Hale returned to the bridge, his presence a steadying force for his team. He took his place at the command console, his gaze fixed on the stars ahead. In the quiet moments before the next storm, Hale allowed himself a brief reflection. He thought of Earth, of the people he was fighting to protect. He thought of the sacrifices his crew had made and would continue to make. And he thought of the Zorak, their arrogance and their belief in their inevitable victory. They didn't understand humanity, not truly. They didn't understand what it meant to fight for something greater than oneself, to stand united against impossible odds. The Vanguard drifted into position, its silhouette stark against the endless void. Hale leaned forward, his voice quiet but firm. This is where we make our stand. Whatever comes next, we'll face it together. And we'll remind them why humanity endures. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a vast and unyielding expanse filled with danger and possibility. The Vanguard held its place, a lone sentinel against the darkness, battered but unbroken. Captain Marcus Hale sat at its helm, his resolve as unyielding as the ship itself. The battle for humanity's survival was far from over, but in this moment the Vanguard stood ready, and that was enough.